Being dependent on others restricts your ability to do things freely. In such a state, you can't just go and do things by yourself. In being dependent on others, you need another to help you do the thing. Someone who is in such a position has less freedom than someone who is not. Therefore, if you value your own freedom, you seek to be independent best you can. And if you seek the equal freedom of all, as anarchists do, you must seek for everyone to have the capacity for independence as best they can. People thinking for themselves is an incredibly important part of this independence. When one is unable to think for themselves, they need to be under the direction of others. They cannot, or have been made to feel as if they cannot, act upon their own conclusions. Not being able to act independently due to needing another to think for you is an incredibly severe restriction of one's freedom that should not be taken lightly. If you value people's freedom, then you seek, to quote Lucy Parsons, the development of self thinking individuals. It's obvious. Yeah, sure. I agree. That quote from Lucy Parsons is over 100 years old. But I do not see anarchists, or others who value freedom, talk about this much, if at all. I think that this natural consequence of valuing freedom is not taken as seriously as it needs to be by the current anarchist cultures. Desiring for everyone to think for themselves, as anarchists should, has incredibly impactful implications for how we should go about interacting with others in even mundane day to day situations. Specifically, I want to focus on handling disagreement with others. If you value people thinking for themselves, then you're only going to engage in disagreement with others, or more specifically, engage in the attempt to change the behavior of others by convincing them. Trying to get them to give in to peer pressure, or to ridicule and shame them into acting differently, or to state your opinion as fact without giving any reason to believe it, are ways of engaging in disagreement that are inconsistent with promoting the independent thinking of others. Convincing, at least in my opinion, is the only way to go about disagreement that is consistent with getting others to think for themselves. As when you convince someone, you change their perspective of the situation in a way that allows them to understand why you think you're correct and they are or were wrong. They come to agree with you for the same reasons you do. Say someone thinks that 2 plus 2 equals 5. I do not know what logic is going on in their brain, but through their own reasoning, they sincerely believe that 2 plus 2 equals 5. Interacting with them by using arguments from peer pressure, like everyone else thinks 2 plus 2 equals 4, why don't you agree with us? Or via shame or ridicule, like you must be an idiot to think that 2 plus 2 equals 5. Or via stating your opinions as fact without explanation, like no, 2 plus 2 equals 4, are all ways of engaging with the individual that disencourage them from thinking for themselves. Their thought process isn't challenged, only the outcome of their thinking is engaged with. The idea that their own internal logic disagrees with the opinion of others is either disregarded or not thought about at all. Compare this to someone who attempts to convince the individual by saying something like, I disagree with you. I think 2 plus 2 equals 4. See, count my fingers with me. 1, 2 on this hand, and 1, 2 on the other. 2 plus 2. And now count them together. 1, 2, 3, and 4. So 2 plus 2 equals 4, right? Disagreeing with someone in such a way maintains that they think for themselves, as by convincing them you change their thinking relating to the disagreement, rather than only seeking to change the behavior. You explain to them your own thought process, allowing them to understand where you are coming from and why you believe what you believe. I think that part of the issue is that people primarily seek to change other people's behavior rather than change the way of thinking that causes the behavior. In seeking to change behavior as the primary or only motive, then a variety of means can be used. You can pressure them to act like everyone else and just assume the majority is correct. You can shame them into associating the behavior with a negative consequence, like being made fun of, and over time the person will likely change their behavior as they do not want to experience shame. You can just keep stating your opinion as fact without any rationale and act like your confidence and repetition makes you correct. And repetition in and of itself is influential. And there are plenty of other ways you can do this as well. Engaging with the other person in such a way fulfills the initial motive of changing the person's behavior, but it clearly, of course, does not do so in a way consistent with valuing the equal freedom of all, of valuing people thinking for themselves. Changing the behavior of someone in such a way subordinates them to another's way of thinking. So, if you seek for people to think for themselves while wanting to change another's behavior, then you must primarily seek to change their way of thinking, unless you need to engage in self defense, of course, but that is a different conversation. So, to summarize what I have said so far, anarchism, or more specifically valuing the equal freedom of all, complete freedom within complete solidarity, implies desiring everyone to think for themselves as much as possible. And desiring people to think for themselves itself implies a desire to resolve disagreements via convincing and convincing alone. I think that this is a pretty simple line of reasoning to make. I also think that it is really, really important and not talked about enough at all. Disagreement occurs every single day. It is one of the most common contexts in which people interact with each other. And in the context of our current society, I think that most people engage in disagreement in a subordinating way. At least in my own experience, people have never truly sought to convince me I was wrong, but instead subordinate me to their perspective and only seek to change my behavior. And I have seen plenty of so called anarchists engage in disagreement in ways consistent with subordinating communication styles. If an anarchist society were to disagree with others in such a way, I do not think it would remain anarchist for long, although I do not think it would have ever truly been anarchist in the first place. The means we use become the ends we arrive at. We must think about all the ways we go about interacting with each other far more than anarchists currently do. And there is far more that can be talked about regarding how we disagree with one another. But one way that is quite clear to me is that we must seek to change people's behavior by convincing them. I think that this conclusion is clear, obvious, and a simple conclusion to come to if you truly value the equal freedom of all. And it has immediate, obvious, and profound consequences for how anarchists should behave on a more personal level than most anarchist theory talks about.